A car crash stole Caspian Thorne's memories, and my best friend, Rosalind, seized the opportunity to become his lover. I watched their saccharine romance unfold, a smile of relief playing on my lips. To the world, Caspian was a handsome, diligent heir to a fortune. He'd built his own company, hardworking and loyal. Everyone envied me for landing such a catch. Only I knew the truth. Caspian was a controlling, obsessive man. He'd installed me in his company, keeping me under his thumb, isolating me from others, yet never introducing me to his friends. He monitored my calls, my messages. A male contact earned me the silent treatment, a female one required a detailed report, a postmortem of every conversation. In a romance novel, Caspian might be the brooding, desirable hero. In reality, he was a walking, talking stranger danger PSA. I was suffocating. I'd tried to quit, only to discover a cleverly worded clause in my contract. Leaving without his permission meant crippling financial penalties. I'd been careless, trapped in a gilded cage. His declarations of love felt like chains. I refused to become his puppet. We fought in the car. Then, the crash. We both ended up in the hospital. My injuries were minor. Caspian, however, suffered a head injury. He woke up and asked, "Who are you?" My mind raced. A wild, improbable idea took root. I'm Larkspur. I'm your assistant. Caspian, the CEO persona instantly reasserting itself, asked for his phone. It was crushed in the accident, I lied. The phone was in my bag, filled with pictures of us. This amnesia was my escape route. Then get Lysander. He's my best friend. He'll know. Of course, sir, I said, grabbing my bag and fleeing, the seed of a daring plan firmly planted. Caspian's memory had regressed to 3 years prior, a time when we were barely acquaintances. Now, he treated me like a lowly employee, barking orders, criticizing my lunch choices. I'm allergic to peanuts. Don't you even know that? He snapped, tossing his chopsticks on the tray. I apologized profusely, silently begging him to fire me. Lysander, in a flamboyant floral shirt, arrived late, casting a dismissive glance at me cowering in the corner. Did the little lady upset you? Still, you have to eat. Little lady? Caspian raised an eyebrow. He looked from Lysander to me. Isn't she your girlfriend? Lysander asked, bewildered. I'm not you, attaching myself to every woman I meet, Caspian scoffed, oblivious to my presence. She's my assistant. My standards aren't that low. He, the supposedly gentle and refined Caspian, was a venomous, petty tyrant. My mistake, Lysander said with an exaggerated shrug, giving me another look. Personally, I prefer the simple ones. He clearly mistook me for a gold digger. He approached me, asking for my number. Before I could refuse, Caspian spoke. I vaguely recall having a girlfriend. Lysander, look into it for me. Consider it done, Lysander grinned, his eyes fixed on mine. I'll deliver your runaway lover right to your bedside. Frozen with panic, I watched him take my phone and enter his number. Rosalind, my neighbor, had always envied my relationship with Caspian. Even after hearing about his controlling nature, she'd sigh dreamily, that's just him showing he cares. You don't know how lucky you are. She'd even confessed, if I were you, I'd be his doting little wife in a heartbeat. I knew she had a crush on him, had even made a few unsuccessful attempts to catch his eye. So, I asked her at the hospital entrance, do you still want to be Caspian's girlfriend? That afternoon, Caspian met his girlfriend, Rosalind, bearing homemade soup and tearful inquiries about his well-being. Caspian was initially confused, but Rosalind flawlessly recited his preferences, even producing photos of him cooking, intimate snapshots only a loved one would possess. Rosalind became his devoted caretaker, catering to his every whim. Even Caspian couldn't resist such dedicated affection. He accepted the charade. No need to investigate further, he told Lysander. My girlfriend is back. I overheard this, standing outside the room with paperwork. What's her name? Lysander's booming voice echoed from within. Rosalind. Caspian hesitated for a beat. My girlfriend's name is Rosalind. Right, Lysander drawled. I'll make sure to meet the lucky lady soon. Caspian hung up, noticing me lurking in the hallway. What are you doing there? Bring me those files. He flung the reports to the floor after a cursory glance. Is this the best you can do? You're incompetent. The accident and amnesia had amplified his already volatile temper. One more mistake and you're fired. One more mistake to freedom. It was going so smoothly. I smiled, turning to leave. Don't forget my new SIM card, Caspian called after. Me. My smile faltered. His old SIM card contained our call logs. If I wasn't fired soon, my carefully constructed plan would unravel. That evening, Lysander bombarded me with calls. I braced myself for the inevitable confrontation. Mr. Thorne, is something the matter? Call me Lysander, darling, his voice dripped with insincerity. Join me for coffee tonight, Larkspur, or should I say, Mrs. Thorne? Rosalind, now living in my apartment, using my old phone, her appearance subtly altered, grabbed my arm. Caspian's falling for me, Larkspur. Don't try to pull a returning true love act. I hope so, I replied sincerely. I genuinely hoped Caspian would fall for the real Rosalind, rendering my efforts meaningless. At the cafe, faced with security camera footage of me and Caspian, I denied everything. Oh, really? Lysander smirked. Do regular colleagues usually engage in this level of intimacy? He pointed to a photo of Caspian with his arm around my waist. I stared at the picture, my heart sinking. Mr. Thorne, the truth is, I put on a simpering expression. I was pursuing him, but he only played along for a bit. He's always loved Rosalind. And how am I supposed to believe you? Lysander leaned back, watching me with amusement. And please, call me Lysander. Why would I leave him if I were his girlfriend? He's such a great catch. I argued, acutely aware of his unwavering gaze. He gathered the photos. I'm quite wealthy myself. Perhaps you'd like to try your luck with me? I'm easily swayed. Like I'd fall into the same trap twice. Seeing my apparent vulnerability only emboldened him. I stood up, slapped some money on the table. You? I'm not interested. Lysander backed off. Caspian was discharged. Despite his memory loss, he slipped back into his CEO role with unnerving ease, leaving me little room for error. I refused to sabotage the work of others, creating a stalemate. Rosalind, increasingly stressed by her charade, confronted me. I don't owe you anything, Larkspur. Caspian's with me now. You gave me the opportunity, but I won his heart. Let's just pretend we don't know each other. I agreed, relieved to finally move on. Just one piece of advice, I said. Don't lose yourself in this. If he asks you to quit your job and work for him, don't. Don't worry, I'm not you, she scoffed. My dream is to be a stay-at-home mom, pampered by a loving husband. I don't want a career. So be it. Despite my desire to avoid him, work required us to travel together for a conference. Caspian had developed PTSD from the accident and hadn't hired a new driver yet. Conveniently, I'd been dragging my feet on that task. I booked us on a slow, crowded train, claiming there were no other options. I even feigned difficulty finding a taxi, forcing him to endure a packed bus. Larkspur. Caspian seated beside me in the crush of bodies. You're fired. Unless the company fires me, I'm not resigning, I retorted, gripping the overhead strap. The bus lurched, throwing me into his arms. I looked up, meeting his incredulous stare. I won't get unemployment if I quit. Fine, he said coldly. You're fired. Bingo. My premature celebratory smile drew his suspicion. You seem awfully happy about being fired. I scrambled for a plausible excuse, but we reached the station. Caspian, dismissing me as insignificant, hurried towards the train. Even though it wasn't a holiday, the train was packed. Caspian, a fastidious man, scowled but graciously offered his seat to a woman with a baby, reclaiming it only after she disembarked. He pulled out his laptop, pausing at the password prompt. Several attempts failed. He slammed the lid shut, frustrated by the limitations of his amnesia. The password is probably XX0317, I offered, professional duty outweighing my desire to torment him. I'd scrubbed all traces of our relationship from my phone and social media, confident I'd left no loose ends. But then, the desktop wallpaper. My portrait. We both stared, speechless. I'd used his laptop a year ago, when the background was a serene landscape. When had he changed it? What is this? Caspian demanded. You tell me. Weren't we supposed to be keeping our relationship secret? Why was my picture on his work computer? My internal barrage of questions was interrupted by a bystander. What's it look like, son? You got a crush on the lass, an older gentleman in the aisle declared. A crush on her? Caspian's lip curled. I must have lost my mind. Sir, I remember now, I blurted. I used this laptop at home. I must have accidentally changed the wallpaper. You will not touch my belongings without my express permission, Caspian said, his tone icy. I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again. We arrived at the hotel late, grabbing a quick dinner in his room before reviewing the conference materials. In work mode, Caspian was focused, attentive, radiating the charm that had initially drawn me to him. As I finalized the documents, a tired Caspian removed his jacket and vest, rolled up his sleeves, and said, Larkspur, you do have a crush on me, don't you? What? I looked up, bewildered. You've been staring at me, he said, loosening his tie. You put your picture on my laptop, hoping I'd think of you. His voice held an unnerving certainty. I told you, it was a mistake. The day of the accident, the doctors asked who you were. You said you were my girlfriend. His fingers tapped his knee, a telltale sign of his perceived advantage. They wouldn't operate without a family member's consent. Despite my resentment, I wouldn't abandon him. Rosalind also told me about your infatuation with me. She warned me to stay away from you. So Rosalind had been busy too. Caspian smirked, a look of disdain on his face. All your little games, your attempts to seduce me. I see right through them. I'm not interested in a manipulative woman like you. Finish your handover and you're gone. I had achieved my goal. I should have been relieved, triumphant. I should have walked away. But I couldn't let him insult me. You want to know why I'm happy to be fired? I retorted. You're selfish, arrogant, and controlling. You use underhanded tactics to manipulate people. That's why I want to leave you. Caspian frowned. What are you talking about? Who's controlling? His phone rang, cutting him off. The screen flashed Rosie. Rosalind's nickname is Rosie. Don't get any ideas, he said, answering the call in a voice dripping with tenderness. I walked out, closing the door behind me. It was over. I was free. There was no need for a final, pointless argument. I left, a quiet sense of peace settling over me. After the business trip, I returned to the office and began the handover process. To my surprise, Rosalind wasn't my replacement. It was Coralia. I realized I needed more interaction with Caspian to build a strong relationship, she explained, and to help clean up your mess. So, I applied for the position. Coralia, previously a bank teller, adapted to my role with unsettling ease, mastering the workflow in a week. My original position hadn't been as Caspian's assistant. He'd manipulated me with sweet Words and empty promises, coaxing me into a role that stifled my aspirations and turned me into his appendage. His suggestion that I become a stay-at-home wife had finally revealed his true intentions. Seeing history repeat itself, I cautioned Karelia, don't just blindly follow Caspian's lead. Your failed experience isn't relevant to me, she snapped. Caspian loves me, and I love him. We'll be happy. Now, please honor our agreement and disappear. One woman's poison is another's paradise. I was clearly meddling. Still, it was a clean break. As I prepared to leave, a delivery arrived, 999 roses, signed your captive fish. My colleagues buzzed with curiosity, and Karelia quipped, so you already had a backup plan. No wonder you were so quick to ditch Caspian. The commotion drew Caspian's attention. He stormed out of his office, scowling. This is a workplace, not a dating service. Larkspur, get rid of those flowers. Hypocrite, I thought, remembering Karelia's recent transfer. I dumped the armful of roses onto his chest. He recoiled, momentarily stunned. Larkspur, what's the meaning of this? I won't accept. Give them back to Lysander, I interrupted, gesturing to the card. Caspian's face paled as he recognized his friend's handwriting. Larkspur, my office. Now. I sat opposite him, his usual air of superiority faltering. Just as Karelia said, you're nothing but a flirt. Failed with me, so you moved on to my friend? You met Lysander once. How could you possibly have charmed him so quickly? We've met more than once, I admitted. Where? When? What did you discuss? How far has this gone? His rapid-fire questions almost made me believe his memory had returned. That's my private life, I said. Lysander is my best friend. I won't see him hurt. Despite his noble words, he leaned across the desk, placing a hand on my shoulder. If you're so desperate for a benefactor, I could make an exception. I thought you were merely controlling, but you're also delusional. I squeezed his hand hard, making him wince, and flung it back at him. Lysander's red sports car was parked outside, attracting attention as usual. He beckoned me over. I ignored him, only to have him jump out and block my path. Not even a hello? Your kind of hello doesn't interest me. Perhaps I should show Caspian those photos after all. I took a deep breath, reminding myself I only had a week left. I'll choose the location, I said, leading him not to his car, but to a nearby noodle shop. Order whatever you like. I ordered a pungent bowl of snail noodles. Lysander wrinkled his nose. When the steaming bowl arrived, he choked out, "You're cruel," and fled outside to gag. He was persistent, though. For 2 days, he ambushed me with questions. Why would any woman leave someone as amazing as Caspian? He didn't even take over his father's company, because he wanted to be with you. We sat on a park bench, the wind whipping around us. I sipped my milk tea, ignoring his bait. Caspian introduced me to Karelia, he continued, picking at his own untouched drink. But I can tell he's not invested. Caspian's possessive. If he truly cherished something, he'd hide it, not flaunt it. He truly loved you. He was just afraid of losing you. His possessiveness comes from a place of love. Why couldn't you forgive him? He was looking for jealousy, regret, something. I disappointed him. You rich boys are hilarious, I said, tossing my empty cup in the trash. Just because Caspian's amazing, his partner should be grateful and mold themselves into his possession? That's not what I meant, he hesitated. Caspian's mother abandoned him and his father. That's why he's so insecure, so controlling. Can't you give him another chance? Abusive husbands always beg for another chance. But there's always a second time, a third. The one who suffers is always the one who stays. Call me scared, call me cowardly, but I wouldn't go back. Lysander saw my resolve. You really won't reconsider? He's not as unreasonable as you think. Lysander, what are you saying? Caspian appeared behind us, his face a mask of shock. Give you another chance? What's going on? He means staying at the company, Coralia, clinging to Caspian's arm, interjected smoothly. Larkspur is a valuable employee. Exactly. Lysander chimed in. It's easier to pursue her if she works here. Caspian turned to me, suspicion still clouding his eyes. Larkspur, do you want to stay? If you apologize for your mistakes. No, I said firmly. And please control your friend. I'm not interested in his advances. Lysander, unfazed by the public rejection, grinned. That's what I love about her, playing hard to get. 2 days before my departure, Coralia pulled me into the stairwell, thrusting a stack of documents at me. I think I made a mistake with these figures. Tell Caspian you assigned this task to me. I was just following orders. Why should I cover for you? I have leverage, Larkspur. If you don't, I'll tell Caspian everything. Her voice dripped with malice. You won't get away so easily. Do your worst. She wouldn't expose herself. As predicted, Coralia left Caspian's office later, red-eyed. Larkspur, she whispered, Caspian's already reprimanded me. Can you please stay late and fix the documents? It was my project, after all. I agreed. After everyone else left, I took the revised documents to Caspian's office. We worked efficiently, our 3 years of collaboration resurfacing. Just as I was about to leave, the lights went out. Power outage? Caspian's voice came from the darkness. Larkspur, use your phone light. I don't have mine. My hand trembled as I fumbled for my phone, dropping it with a clatter. Larkspur? Caspian's voice was soft. Are you all right? He reached out, his hand finding mine, sensing my tremors. Are you afraid of the dark? I tried to control myself, but my voice betrayed me. My father was an alcoholic. He'd come home drunk, raging. He beat my mother, she ended up in the hospital. Caspian pulled me into a hug. Don't be afraid. I'm here, Rosie. My mother had said the same thing, don't be afraid, Rosie. Daddy's just drunk. He still loves us. Then came the beatings, again and again, until she lay unconscious. In a hospital bed. Daddy had said he loved me, that I should take care of him. Caspian had said he loved me too, while trapping me in his web of control. The lights flickered back on. I wiped away my tears, pulling away from his embrace. Thank you, Caspian. I should go. It's late. I'll drive you home, he said, picking up my shattered phone. You won't find a cab in this condition. Apparently, he'd overcome his driving phobia faster than I'd anticipated. I don't dwell on the past, he said as he drove. The pain of a dysfunctional family shouldn't be a burden on the next generation. I hope you can let go too. Thank you, I said sincerely. We'll both say goodbye to the past. Silence filled the car. As we neared my building, I couldn't resist asking, Caspian, if your girlfriend stopped loving you, would you let her go? Depends, he said, navigating the narrow streets. If I still loved her, I'd find a way to win her back. What if she hated your ways? The navigation announced our arrival. Caspian stopped the car. I reached for the door handle, but he locked it. Larkspur, he turned to me, his eyes searching mine. If all this, the playing hard to get, the sob story, was your twisted way of seducing me, then congratulations. You succeeded. He took my hand. Be my girlfriend. The universe had a sick sense of humor. All my efforts, all my pain, for nothing. What about Coralia? I asked, incredulous. I'll handle that. I'll give her a severance package. He said it so casually. Let go of me. I snapped. I never tried to seduce you. I despise you. His pride stung, he released my hand, his face hardening. Get out. I slammed the door, watching his car speed away. Goodbye, Caspian. We were even. On my last day, I packed my belongings, declining my colleague's offer of a farewell party. As I passed Caspian's office, my phone rang. It was Lysander. Larkspur, his voice was strained. Caspian crashed his car last night. Caspian emerged from his office, effortlessly snatching the phone from my hand. I have an announcement. We'll talk later. He had a bandage around his head, his face pale, his eyes cold. He walked away with my phone. I stood there, dumbfounded. He gathered everyone. Corelia passed by, muttering, "You're still here?" "I have an important announcement," Caspian addressed the crowd. Feeling awkward and out of place, I set down my box, waiting to retrieve my phone. Caspian walked towards me. I held out my hand, expecting the phone. Instead, he took my hand and announced, "This is my girlfriend, Larkspur. We're getting married." My jaw dropped. He pulled out a diamond ring. Funny thing, last night I got a call from a jeweler, asking why I hadn't picked up my engagement ring. There must be some mistake. I couldn't possibly, I stammered, but he cut me off. I asked who the ring was for. Was it for Corelia? The jeweler laughed, saying I changed partners quickly. Unfortunately, the ring was already engraved with Larkspur's initials. It couldn't be altered. I was speechless. Caspian, however, was on a roll. I was so excited, I crashed my car. Luckily, no amnesia this time. He slipped the ring onto my finger, his voice almost giddy. "See? No mistake. It fits perfectly." He then put a ring engraved with his initials on my other hand. My colleagues erupted in cheers, drowning out my protests. Corelia later confessed she'd never truly reached Caspian, even when he had amnesia. His eyes had always followed me. She had to step aside, she said, for true love. Lysander claimed that Caspian's willingness to stay with me despite my deception proved his deep love. "I should be grateful," he said. Caspian himself had declared, "You don't like my control? I'll change. But I won't let you go." I was done with this twisted notion of love. They were all delusional, dragging me into their drama. So, I played their game. I called Lysander over and told Caspian, "While you had amnesia, I fell for Lysander. Please, let us be happy." Lysander paled, trying to bolt. "Don't believe her, Caspian. She's trying to break us up. You have no idea how cruelly she rejected me." Caspian disappeared for 3 days. When he returned, he was surprisingly calm. "When you said you wanted to leave, I thought you were just angry. But during my amnesia, you went to extreme lengths to get away from me. I realize now, I can't keep you." His reaction stunned me. "Larkspur, you're free." He even bowed slightly. "I voided the contract. I'm sorry for how I treated you. Can I have the ring back?" I threw it away. I was flustered. "That's all right. Then let's say goodbye here." He didn't look back, leaving Lysander and me standing there. "What's gotten into him?" Lysander whispered after Caspian left. "Is he playing some reverse psychology game? Were you serious about falling for me? We could keep it quiet until he's really over you." I didn't care about his games. I was free, and I wasn't going back. I left the company, moving to a warmer climate, starting over. I received a handwritten letter from Caspian, explaining his change of heart. He admitted his initial anger, his impulse to trap me in a marriage I didn't want. But during his 3-day absence, he'd reflected on my stories about my family. He'd learned about my comatose mother, my imprisoned father. It had forced him to confront his own buried trauma, his hatred for his absent mother and his philandering father. He finally understood the damage he'd inflicted on me. He was seeing a therapist, he wrote, trying to overcome his possessiveness. He hoped I could heal too, and perhaps give him, and myself, another chance. He'd be in town in a week on business. If I could forgive him, he'd meet me at the airport. I didn't know if it was genuine remorse or another manipulation. I folded the letter and threw it away. Dinner tonight, Larkspur, a new colleague asked. I smiled and shook my head. My parents are visiting. We already have plans. You have such a close family, she said, envious, before walking away. Life is a stage, and we are all our own directors. Escaping a controlling man requires more than Corellia's clumsy acting. I'd known about Caspian's family history. From the moment I decided to leave, I'd planned to use it. I'd sprinkled hints of my fabricated tragic backstory, letting it reach Caspian and his friends, waiting for the right moment to deploy it. I had orchestrated my own rescue. Whether Caspian's remorse was real or not, I wasn't interested. In this vast world, I choose love and hate on my own terms. I wouldn't waste another moment on a man teetering on the edge of obsession.